Last week we saw chaos unfold on the track during the first race of the season. Now we're here at Oulton Park today where many drivers will be aiming for a much better result. Hello everybody and welcome back to the RCI GT3 Sprint Challenge. I'm Tim Peck, joined today in the commentary booth by Oulton Devonshire, and we have Kevin Boss behind the broadcast. Oulton, it was absolute chaos over in Barcelona in round one. Do you think it'll be a similar situation today?
I've just been thinking that actually. I mean, Oulton Park, thin track, it's really difficult to overtake, and obviously I think the track's more suited for GT4s and touring cars than it is for GT3s, but I mean, we can remain hopeful, right? I mean, first race, first race of the season, people just, shaking off the cobwebs, getting back into it. A few mistakes add up to a lot, so hopefully this time round it should be a bit cleaner.
Yeah, absolutely. The other thing you have to bear in mind about the last race is it was the first RCI race we did after the new update, which introduced the 3 new cars and some fixes for the older cars as well. So a lot of drivers still getting used to that. Of course, now today, though, they've still only had an extra week to really get their hands behind the wheel and focus on their cars a bit more. But like you said, also that extra little bit of time, maybe just calming down a little bit after the first race, easing themselves back into the season. Might see some safer action on track here today. However, as you also mentioned, a much thinner track and I'd argue a more difficult one to navigate as well. Barcelona tends to be quite easy to navigate round. It's a track everyone knows quite well, and it's got some nice wide corners. Oulton Park though, like you said, not much room for error. There's definitely not a lot you can do. If you go wide around the corner, chances are you're going to be taking someone out with you if there's anyone in your radius, because this track, it's made for GT4s rather than a GT3 car.
Yeah, I mean, looking back at the track's history, I mean, a lot of these British tracks were made around the time of World War II, so obviously made for cars that were a damn sight smaller than what we see today, even in terms of touring cars. But obviously, Oulton Park being a great staple of the BTCC championship, as well as the British GT as well. They also come here as well. So yeah, no, Marvin's getting the NSX and P9, looking like they are running second, third in class at the moment. But yeah, no, it's an interesting track. It's very complex, very technical, very much a driver's track.
Absolutely. We've currently got Grant Willemot in that provisional pole position. Their lap time of a 1:33.467 is the time to beat right now. Lagalante behind them is 6 tenths off the pace currently, with Billy Octane slotting in third. So a bit of a way to go to close the gap to Grant Willemot up ahead for some of the other drivers. Of course, though, we're only in the first couple of minutes of qualifying. Most drivers only just on our lap, let alone set their fastest as well. Of course, we have 15 minutes of qualifying here on a Friday. Cars can do as many laps as they can in that time to set the best lap time possible, which will determine their start for the race. And also, long ago when we used to commentate on a Friday, you only got 10 minutes for a qualifying session. Now you get that extra 5 minutes, and on a track like this, which is quite short, a lap time of only 1 minute and 33 seconds, you get quite a lot of laps out in that time. Most drivers even pit in the middle and go for a second qualifying session.
I mean, yeah, that is always an option. Last week here, that's a really good point, Tim. Last week we mentioned about tyres graining with the new update. I believe there's been a patch since now and then that has fixed the graining issues entirely. It hasn't fixed tyre wear. Obviously, tyre wear will always be a naturally occurring thing, but apparently the graining is a thing. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong here, Tim. Just from what I've been told, I believe the graining issue got patched last night. So it's going to be interesting to see how that plays into strategies for the race today. But, I mean, on a track like Oulton, I mean, stopping is completely viable, because especially if you're trying to find clear air and a little bit of space, then, that might be your only option, really, to set in a good time.
Well, it's interesting that you mentioned that the tyre graining's been patched, Austin, because, of course, we were talking to Joshua Elation. They won the Silver Split race last week. We had an interview with them just after the race, and what they were saying was that it's still very up in the air at the moment. There's some tactics. We came into this season thinking, our car's going to be pitting in the middle of the race for a fresh set of tyres. Is it worth taking a fresh set? And we saw last week a couple of drivers did opt into staying in the pit lane a little bit longer, taking a fresh set of tyres, but then had a huge comeback drive on their hands as well. And it was really hard to tell, amidst all the chaos of last week too, as to whether it was the right tactic. But from what you're saying, if they fix those tyre grading issues, well, it goes back to what we used to say, which is there really isn't a point in taking that fresh set of tyres. And again, it just shakes up the strategy. What's the best call to make here? It's going to be really hard to tell, and with all these small patches coming out after the initial update, if they keep coming out like this, it's going to be very difficult for these drivers to learn what the new strategy is, what the best meta is going into each race, because with stuff like the tyre grading changing, it's just going to be like really hard to predict how the car is going to perform, especially across the entire hour.
Yeah, I mean, don't forget though, Tim, that graining is just one aspect of tyre wear, because you've got graining, then you've got wear itself, as in how much tread you have left in the tyre at the end of a run, which is usually indicated by a number counting down from 3.0, if I remember correctly. It's been a while since I've actually been in the technical side of ACC. So what that number essentially means is the lower the number, the more rubber you've scraped off the tyre, rather than graining being the condition of the rubber. So it could be that the actual degradation of the rubber, or how much rubber of the tyre gets scrubbed off, which results in marbling as well, that it could also be accelerated. So it could be that Kunos wants a higher tyre wear for this new tyre model, which means that, you know, looking after the tyres is certainly a factor, but maybe they got something slightly wrong which was causing graining in the first place, and now it's just still an accelerated level of wear, but more along the lines of kind of what they were wanting to go with. So it might still be something the drivers have to take into consideration.
Absolutely, it's things like that we just have to keep our eye out for today, see if we can see what the drivers are doing, and hopefully we'll hear from some of the drivers as well to see their thoughts and opinions on what the best strategy is going forward. Well, a big warm welcome to all of you at home. We're joining you today via YouTube, and if you enjoy what you see today, make sure you give this video a like and also hit the bell icon to know when we go live again. This is the second round in the championship of, I believe, 5 rounds. Later on, we will be visiting a wide range of tracks. We're going to Paul Ricard for round 3. That will be next week. For round 4, we'll be going over to Zandvoort. Round 5 will be the Nürburgring, and then we're finishing up round 6, which will be hosted on Friday the 2nd of June at the new track Valencia. So we'll be returning to Spain for round 6 as well. That's not a final you're going to want to miss out on, as we see cars take to the brand new track added in ACC as well. Well, qualifying now halfway done. Martin Lawrence, the winner of your first race, currently in that provisional pole position. Grant Wilmot, who's held a lot of speed today, driving the new Lamborghini. They currently find themselves in that second place and still improving on their delta in this first sector as well, so they've definitely got time to find here. And Christoph Verstappen had a lot of misfortune last week, finds himself currently sitting in the provisional 3rd place. Let's talk for a minute about Christoph Verstappen, Oulton. Of course, someone who we're very used to seeing at the front, won the last series in the Friday Championship in the last couple of races. So, like I said, somebody you're very used to seeing in the front last week just seemed to have a miserable time. Got caught up in the midfield, only managed to qualify just outside of the top 10, then got caught up in instant going through the first corner and ended up retiring the car due to having several more incidents later on towards the end of the race as well. It's really didn't go their way this time round, and they're one of the only drivers that have taken the older car. Of course, they're in a Bentley out on track at the moment. Do you think they're going to get a bit better fortune today, or do you just think that the Bentley right now is massively underperforming compared to the new cars?
I mean, we didn't really get a chance to really see last week, did we? I mean, it wasn't such a great qualifying for Verstappen, but it could just be that that particular car isn't strong at Barcelona. And likewise with all of the results we saw last week, you know, I know Zelinski's had a really massive charge in the Porsche and almost made back the time they lost it in the pit stop. But yeah, no, I think it's too difficult to say. We need to see more consistency across more tracks to really get an idea as to that Bentley's pace of that 747 of Verstappen. Because, you know, you're right, Verstappen obviously he's been a championship winner here on Thursdays and Fridays, and obviously multiple other days here in the past. I mean, Verstappen's it's safe to say one of the quicker drivers. So yeah, I mean, we just need to see more consistency with that particular car. I expect it to be really good around Oulton, to be fair. I mean, the curbs, which it literally, as I'm talking about the curbs now, I mean, going through the shell chicane, you know, very, very bumpy part of the track, and that's typically what the Bentley's always been really strong with. So, I mean, currently running in P4, and I mean, all to play for. I mean, don't underestimate the power of the drop ramp we have this season too.
Yeah, absolutely. like you said, currently up in P4, they're looking a lot better in qualifying today than they were last week as well. You mentioned the drop round. Well, for those of you at home that don't know what we mean by that, in our Friday championship we have a drop round where your worst result is taken into account and it's just scraped off at the end of the season. Everyone's worst result isn't counted, which means that if you don't attend a race, or if you have one really bad race where you have to retire, you don't have to worry about it affecting your overall score, as it won't be counted. But that being said, Verstappen wouldn't use that in their first round, Austin. They no longer have that drop round to their advantage. They've got that 0 points in the first round, which means from now on they have to drive as well as they can for every single track. They can't afford to miss a week. They want to be fighting at the top. They can't afford to have any more incidents as well, because they need to be fighting in that top 3 every single race now. But like I said, some good pace so far today. They're in that top 4. They're also up in their delta right now as they're carrying on through the first sector too. So again, definitely more time to find there. But so far, Martin Lawrence, the only driver to break into the 132, sitting up at the top right now with a 132.7, 5 tenths ahead of the rest of the field. They looked very, very good at the beginning of last season, Austin. Only just lost it in the very final round at the end. And then they came back last week, won the race just by being the most consistent out track. Already here at Oulton Park, looking very, very strong. Is this Martin Lawrence's championship, do you think? Is it this time round they can just hold on to that luck a little bit longer? Because they've been performing so well the last couple of Friday championships.
They have. I mean, they were so consistent last season, as you were saying, but I think the car choice might have been the thing that let them down ultimately. Obviously, really, really difficult for that M6 to kind of perform at Watkins Glen. So, again, another odd car choice for this season potentially. I mean, it's obviously got the CLR colours on that Aston Martin, but yeah, the Aston seems like it's still quite a strong choice amongst the even the new Ferrari and the Porsche and the Lamborghinis. So, you know what, Tim, I'm going to say, I think Martin can. I think Martin will be coming back even hungrier than before, because, I mean, why wouldn't you? You know, you just narrowly miss out on a championship by just a couple of points. You got to want that back.
Yeah, absolutely. And Martin Lawrence, like I said, did so well consistency-wise in the last championship. They're going to be one to look out for. They won the first race of the season, so already will be in the eyes of Verstappen daily. And Harry Conway as well, a driver who's won championships in Night Owl and Wednesday championships. I believe they've won a couple of Monday champs as well, Austin. I believe they've got 4 RCI championship wins under their belt. Harry Conway now making an appearance in the Friday series. Again, like Verstappen last week, got caught up in some accidents early on and just had overall a very bad time in race 1. But today, looking like they're going to start towards the front again. A P3 start for Harry Conway, especially the new Ferrari, could be very, very good for them. So you've got a couple of big names at the top right now, Austin. And it's only race 2. This championship can still go in any direction.
I mean, that's the kind of season you kind of want. And speaking of things you don't want, that's Daly losing it and pulling out in front of. This is qualifying too, so this is live stewarded. That's another thing to bear in mind. Also, Daly just lost it a little bit going down into Cascades, and lost it on the straight somehow, and just pulled in front of someone. I'm not sure, it was another Ferrari. I mean, looking on the side, there's a lot of Ferraris on the field as to who it could have been. I didn't catch a number on the side, but yeah, that was. I'm being told it's a 2-1-2 of is it Kwiatkowski? So, that's yikes. That's yikes, Tim.
Yeah, that's going to put them in the eye shot of the stewards very early on. Like you said, we have live stewarding for this event, which means they'll be paying attention to everything like that in both qualifying and the race as well. Speaking of qualifying, we've just come to the end of it now. Christoph Verstappen currently in pole position with a time of 1:32.695. They're in the pits though, so will not have a chance to set a quicker lap. Martin Lawrence still on a final lap here, yet to cross the line, gaining time in their delta. Currently sitting in a provisional P2 as well, just 1/10 of Christoph Verstappen ahead, so they're going to be looking to put themselves back in pole as well. Grant Wilmot in third. They will hold on to that place as they will not be able to improve either as they've returned to the pits as well. Not a lot of cars out on track, Austin. Usually we see in these final stages of qualifying a lot of cars still out on track, but it just seems today that most drivers pulling into the pits quite early on, set the best lap time that they could, finish qualifying quite early.
I mean, it can be quite frustrating in qualifying, getting stuck behind somebody. So I wouldn't. I mean, and also it's going to be another race of attrition. I mean, I don't want to use last week as a benchmark, but at the same time, it's like Oulton Park. You know, I've done a few races here myself, and it has a tendency to be a little bit on the hectic side. So there's maybe the mentality going on of, you know what, I'm going to sacrifice qualifying, I'm going to hang back a little bit, I'm going to let the cars in front make mistakes, I'm going to capitalise on that, and that's not a bad way to approach a race.
Absolutely. Well, those are your final results after qualifying. Christopher Sheppen with 2 fastest sector times will be in your pole position for the race. A time of a 1:32.695 puts them on pole. Martin Lawrence in second had the quickest sector 1, the time of a 1:32.742, finds himself in second. Grant Willamot has a great qualifying, is in third place. Harry Conway in fourth, and Justus Selenskus will line up in fifth place as well. The rest of the qualifying order on your screen now. Joshua Lation, the winner of Silver Split last week, in pole position for the silver class. And then you have got Tixera behind them. They're in P12 overall, but P2 in class, bringing the fight to Joshua Lation. That's how things are looking after qualifying. Quite an important track to qualify on today, Austin, because we've said many times, very thin track. You don't want to be caught behind someone in the race because it might take a while to find a line through.
Yeah, I mean, that's the disadvantage to what I just said, you know, just kind of hanging back a little bit. It's, I mean, again, it also comes down to how clean people are in front. You know, if people are going off, going wide, I mean, Cascades, it's easy to go too wide. Island Bend, it's easy to go wide. It's easy to gain a few positions as well down in the hairpin. So, yeah, I mean, anything can happen.
Absolutely. And well, let's take a look at the results from last week's race. We're going to have the championship standings on your screen now. For the Pro Split, Martin Lawrence winning last week, 34 points. And they find themselves in first place in the only Aston Martin on the field. Dan Vardson finishing second, gains himself 32 points. Grant Willamot starting in P3 today is P3 in the championship as well with 25 points. Justus Salenskus had a great comeback drive after having to pit for a fresh set of tyres and a 10-second penalty. Managed to claw their way back up into fourth place. Sean Daly found himself in fifth, just in front of Lagalente, who finished sixth place. Billy Octane also up there in the top 10 ahead of their teammate Ted Edwards, who finds himself in P8. Danny Santo in P9 and Van der Lind rounding out your top 10. Further down the field, Bailey Collins scored 5 points, finishing 11th place last week in the Pro Split. Everyone with a 0 next to their name was taking part in the race and is still in the championship as well. However, they didn't score any points last week, and any hyphens that you see next drivers like Martin Lindrup means they've signed out of the championship. But a lot of those names still in this race today, so keep your eye on those drivers because they will be looking to gain some points.
We in with the silver results now from last week. So Joshua Lation took the win for last week with 36 points in first place. Jim Plasman in P2 with 29 points. Ryan Daniels in P3 with 25. And Agudelo with 21. Marvin Stier, usually fairly quick in silver class, to be fair, in fifth place with 18 points. Daniel Durrett with 15 points in P6. P7 is Texiera with 13 points. Abel dos Ramos in P8 with 12 points, being trailed by Francesco Pin in P9, and Stefano Ricciardo rounds out the top 10. Ibiza Racer in P11 with 5 points, with Reese Wilkinson trailing by with just a point behind in P12. Christopher McNichol in P13 with 3 points. John Wells in P14. Tony Quito with 0 points. Stant with 0 points. And G.I. Roos with 0 points. And everyone else, I believe, has signed out of the championship.
Well, those are how the standings are looking after race one. A lot of drivers there with 0 points after DNFing in round one last week at Barcelona. Definitely was a chaotic race. I'd recommend going and checking it out, actually, if you're interested to know why so many drivers who are, again, like we've said, known to be at the top of the field, just struggling to have a lot of points or even score any points last week. It was... well, also, I think chaotic is the best way to put it, to be honest. There's not much more you can say about how last week went. A lot of penalties being handed out, a lot of accidents on screen as well. Of course, like you said, today we're expecting drivers to probably be a bit more calmer as they look to just try and secure some points if possible. We're going to see a lot of drivers here wanting to get much better results, but Oulton Park, it's a thin track, and we've mentioned already there's not a great load of overtaking opportunities that are safe to do, and when drivers still want to score as many points as possible, they're going to be looking for those overtakes, maybe a bit more recklessly than usual. So we'll see how today turns out. But that being said, Christoph Verstappen lining up on pole, that is how they wanted to start this race. They weren't in the top 10 in qualifying last week. To start on pole today, I mean, that's got to feel good in a Bentley.
Yeah, I mean, for us, it means we get Verstappen versus Lorenz, round two, for this season. Now, it feels like, in the background, it was happening all season long, even though, there was races where Lawrence and Verstappen were, fairly far apart in terms of finishing positions, but towards the end, it kind of all came down to the final race of the season. So, yeah, we actually get some on-track action, and again, as I kind of predicted, that Bentley, maybe its ability on the curbs is what makes it really strong around here, but we'll have to see. We have the opportunity to see where it pulls ahead of the Aston, where the Aston pulls time back, and for Verstappen, ultimately this means that they control the pace of the race. They get to be the car in front. They kind of get to set, the kind of, I suppose, like the tempo in a way. Kind of calm cars down around them. Just drive somewhat defensively and kind of keep the cars behind them, but behind them.
Absolutely, and when you're in a car as big as the Bentley is, you're going to find it very easy to keep the cars behind you. As I recommend checking that out. It's a lot of fun. Who knows, it might just tempt you to maybe invest in a nice new sim rig as well. Driver 61 helps drivers fulfill their full potential out track by providing one-to-one driver coaching courses. You can get 25% off by using the discount code which is in the description of the video below. Go Setups provide expertly made ACC setups for all skill levels. They're built by some of the fastest professional esports drivers and sim racing engineers around the world. You can go and visit the link in our description and browse their premium setup shop today. And of course, our final partner is Fanatec, who are a global leader in high-end sim racing hardware. They don't need an introduction. Everyone's probably heard of Fanatec at some point in their sim racing career, providing load cell pedals and direct drive wheelbases of the highest quality. You can help us out if you use our affiliate link when making purchases from Fanatec. Thank you very much if you do so as well. We'll talk more about the partners throughout the race and at the end as well, but for now, looking back towards the track, Christoph Verstappen leading the way in the Bentley. Like Austin said, will be setting the pace in the early stages of the race day. Martin Lawrence, your current championship leader, sitting P2 just behind them. Grant Willemot has looked very, very fast in previous qualifying sessions, both today and last week, lining up P3. I reckon Grant Willemot might be one to keep the eye on today, Austin.
Yeah, I mean, that Lamborghini coming in P3, I mean, I'm going to throw a wild stab in the dark and say that's the new Lamborghini that came out just a few weeks ago.
Absolutely, yeah.
I mean, it kind of has to be, really, to be on that kind of pace as we come around Diaz Leap. Yeah, Willemot's going to be one to look out for. Verstappen in that gap is going to be one to watch out for. Lawrence is also always one to watch out for. Salinska's had pace last week, so does Conway normally, so your entire top 5 here. And some look for like Alante on the chat, which will be good as we go green.
Well, the car is now going down towards turn 1. You can see Martin Lawrence get a good run around the outside of Christoph Verstappen, but Verstappen just able to pull alongside. But again, Lawrence getting a much better run out turn 1 there. Starts to pull ahead further down the field. You've got cars going 2, even 3 wide at some point. Spinning Octane navigating their way through the field, hanging around the side of P10, looking for a way through the number 33 of Danny Santo, who picked up some dirt on the outside there. See further up the field, it looks like Martin Lawrence managing to push their way into the lead as well. You can see the Octane yet again in the Triple R car, gaining a couple of positions at the start, and there on your screen right now, Martin Lawrence for Connection Lost Racing, getting the better run out of turn 1, go round the outside of Verstappen, manages to get up into P1, and now Verstappen in the Bentley just has to follow as Martin now sets the pace for the race.
I mean, Martin just got a really strong start, really strong dive into T1, got themselves alongside and just pushed their way through it, cascades it seemed. So yeah, just took advantage of the Bentley, just taking a little bit to get going, but I mean, it's a long race. It's only if you're not even complete the first lap. That's the 91, I believe, with a yellow flag down at the chicane. And I did see a car at the bottom of the Cascades in the wall too. I think it might have. It can't have been Santo, because Santo's running in P8 currently. So we've had a few moments. I've got a replay. So Ibiza Racer coming down through the chicane. Looks like they just missed the braking spot, went wide, and that was contact with another car. So that might be one for the stewards.
Absolutely, stewards are going to be paying attention to what happened at the beginning there, but for Oulton Park, I'd say a fairly safe start all round. You currently got Joe Basman on your screen. They're just trying to catch up with the rest of the field after being involved in an earlier incident. Now going back to watch Danny Santo, who got taken by Billy Octane very early on. Billy Octane, of course, gaining, I believe, 3 positions there, finding himself up into P7 in the field. Santo looking to strike back. The Sim Racing Sports cars, a fan favourite of last week. I know we had a couple of people coming into the chat saying that they're going to cheer the number 33 on. Danny Santo managed to do a great job last week of keeping that car in the top 10 again, sitting in P8. It's a good place for Santo to be there. They usually find themselves up there in that top 10 section, or last week at times were pressuring to get into the top 5 as well, so more upcoming drivers in the field. Like you said, any of the top 5, even I'd argue the top 6, maybe even 7 now, could end up taking away a win today. They're all previous RCI race winners too. It's worth noting as well, further down the field in the silver split, those are the drivers with the silver numbers next to their name. Joshua Nation, the leader of the championship, started in a provisional pole in this race, has been now overtaken by Texera, who finds himself in P10 overall in the Mercedes too. So now Joshua Nation, after last week where they had a fairly straightforward race, also they weren't under too much pressure, just everything went right for them. Now this week they're really going to have to get their arms out and show what they can do against their own split.
This is on the assumption that this race is cleaner than last week, but honestly, so far we've only really seen two major incidents. Welcome to some of the drive-through, but I think that happened at the race start. Jordan Daly going on the outside of Cascades there, going slightly wide, a little bit of a bonk there, and that was one of the Porsches. That would be the car that I saw in the wall at the bottom of Cascades at the start of the race. Jordan Daly getting a bit wrapped up in that as it was, and that seemed to be the cause of the incident. Verstappen currently holds fastest lap of the race as well, on board with Omar Milano. This is Danny Santo's teammate with the Tyre Sim Racing Esports in that teal blue Ferrari. Going down into the Shell Islands, it's the Shell Islands hairpin, I believe it's called. Going down into the chicane afterwards and catching up to Lation.
Absolutely a fight out on the field at the moment. Rolano in the pro split, of course, but that being said, I mean, we were talking about last week, after the standard of driving we saw from the silver split drivers, you could argue that easily most of the top 4 could have been in the pro split and would have been able to hold their own. I mean, there were some drivers last week, Joshua Lation, Marvin Steer, they really stood out as being able to perform at a high level. So that means Rolano definitely going to have an easy time of it here, finding their way through the silver split drivers. Of course, they're going to have to. They want to start overtaking for points. Racer up in P9 is their next closest opponent. Danny Santo for Sim Racing Esports. We've watched them a couple of times so far in this race. Overtaken by Billy Octane on the first lap. Now looking to try and find their way back through. Hasn't fallen off the rear of the Porsche too much here. You see Billy Octane in the Triple R racing car just ahead of them. Danny Santo, again, it's all going to come down to, what I think today's going to come down towards it, is where you can find overtakes, because we've mentioned it a couple of times, it's a very thin track, and there are overtaking opportunities, like the corner we've just gone through, the left-hander there, you can overtake there if you get enough momentum, and we saw as well on turn 1, you can also get enough momentum around there to try and slingshot your car through as well, so there's definitely overtaking opportunities, but I think it's going to be a race today of, I can't even think of the word, I want to say patience, but it's just going to be patience of waiting for that exact right moment to strike. It could be one of those races where you just see cars following each other really tightly for 5-6 laps before the first opportunity even opens itself up today.
You see, I think actually on point to the conversation we were having before the stream, and I know you would think, oh God, which one? I want to say I disagree. I think. Here we go. There we go. Sigh of relief. You know, we can't let them know that. No, I disagree, Tim. I think that it's going to be a case of even if you can't find an overtaking opportunity. You can still make that time in the pit lane. You know, you can still come down to strategy. You know, you can stop at the same time as someone. You can try and get an undercut or an overcut, but trying to keep a consistent sort of pace to the cars around you or the car ahead of you. That could be what this comes down to. And that's the Porsche we saw involved in an accident earlier with Daly. That's like a Lante in the number 7, getting a little bit squirrely there through Druids.
Galante in that number 7 has been a very fast driver so far in the championship, but again, just one of the drivers that got caught up in quite a lot of chaos last week. I mean, I can easily say that about every single driver out on the track right now, other than Martin Lawrence. I think everyone had their fair share of navigation skills to deal with last week as they tried to find their way through the field. It's definitely been, without trying to commentate to curse, this has been cleaner today so far. Danny Santos still finds himself behind Billy Octane. Seems like they've just got a little bit more pace than the Porsche ahead, but they need to find the right overtaking opportunity here. Like you said, it's going to be a case of waiting for that moment to rise as well. Of course, they're under pressure from a racer from behind who likewise is holding up Texera, who really wants to get through these drivers. Texera's worried about it. They're not directly racing the cars ahead of them for position because, of course, they're in different splits, so they're not getting more points for overtaking them. But they've got Joshua Lation right behind, and they would love to put a couple of pro cars between them and their nearest competitor right now. And I'm calling it out. If Texera manages to find their way through a race and sticks himself between Santo and the racer here, Austin, they're in for a really good race because they even have a buffer to Lation, which is exactly what they need right now. They need a couple of cars in between just to stutter that momentum and not make it so easy for Lation to find something, especially in the pit window.
Yeah, I mean, it just kind of stumps Lation's momentum, really. I mean, you have them having one car to get around, obviously, putting the car between them. So, no, I could just repeat everything you said there, Tim. That's entirely just it. But again, it means having the pace, and it means I mean, a racer's not just going to give the position. The racer doesn't have just to give the space. Despite not being in the same class. Texera's really going to have to fight for it. That's Ryan Daniels going wide at the Cascades, and I believe that's like Galante fighting a way through. Looks like the Porsche's a bit more settled now. I was kind of worried they might have a little bit of rear damage. It's a bit of a replay here with Ryan Daniels. I think this is just a replay of the overtake. Yeah, very, I don't want to say aggressive, because very ambitious, I believe, there by like Galante going on the inside of Cascades. It's a bit of a bump on the outside of that corner, and it can really unsettle the car. So we're kind of lucky to get through that with no incident.
Absolutely. The Sim Racing eSports driver Danny Santo, we've been watching them quite a lot so far this race, still following through with Billy Octane, not quite able to find anything yet. And you know what? I'm going to agree with you, Austin. I think what they need to do here is they need to get a lot closer to the real Billy Octane. Of course, that does open the opportunity for error up a little bit and makes it more risky. Not likely there could be an instant, but I think what Danny Santo needs to do is they need to get all up in Billy Octane's rear right now, really try and force some defensive maneuvers out of Octane, because the more they become a nuisance, they keep sticking their nose down the inside, maybe even sticking it up the outside, just trying to show Octane, look, I'm trying to come through, I've got some pace on you. They can do that, and they might just make it so that Octane starts to panic a little bit, and that opens the opportunity for the number 3 Porsche to maybe make a mistake that would help Danny Santo get through there on your screen right now. Like Galante trying to climb up through the field, there's a 15-second penalty. It's not going to stop them from climbing, though. They get themselves up into P18, overtaking Ramos, who I'm sure they didn't want to defend too hard against the pro split driver, trying to charge their way back up through the field as well. But yeah, you know what, Austin, I'm going to double back on what I said earlier. I'm going to disagree with myself here and say the best course of action is to be as feisty as possible out on track, try and force a mistake out of your opponent.
That's just it. It's just, when I say be consistent, I mean be consistently annoying, You just kind of want to make your presence known. Don't be over aggressive, because I feel like around Oulton Park, especially with how wide these cars are, if you're over aggressive, it's not going to end well for either driver. It's not going to end well for the stewards. You know, we had to take them out for ice cream last week, guys. Like they were traumatized by the end of it. So, you know, it's not good for anybody, you know, trying to be overly aggressive, trying to force a move that isn't on. So, you know, and again, maybe last week is kind of playing in the drivers' minds too. You know, maybe, you know, those drivers that had races ruined that they feel, you know, might have happened unfairly. So they might put themselves in a position to further avoid being in a situation like that again. So a little bit more conservative, a little bit more consistency, that might be what the drivers are looking for this time now.
Absolutely, a chance of redemption for a lot of these drivers wanting to score a much better result, getting some points to put them in the championship. Right now, John Daly looking for a way through Salenskus, ahead of them two very well-known drivers, known for winning races and also known for their speed out on track as well. They'll be batting out, I'm sure, for a long time for this race. Lagalante, we see it a couple of times overtaking cars towards the back. They quite far back from where they are expected to be right now, usually a top 10 driver. They're just trying to charge their way through the field, getting very close to the rear of Ricardo there. Now going towards the outside, maybe looking for a move going through the hairpin here. Quite able to find anything. Ricardo not wanting to give this up so easily. It may be worth it for the 137 here to think about letting Lagalante through, just because they're going to be relentless. You can see they're just backing out in the final seconds. Again, Lagalante throwing themselves towards the chicane at a high speed, and I mean, they're not obliged to move out of the way, Austin. A lot of these silver drivers can definitely hold their own, but I know if it was me in that situation, I'm behind the wheel of that car, I see a driver in a different split hurling themselves full speed at me, wanting to get through. I'm going to admit, I'd take the nervous route and probably just dive out of the way, because I'm not going to be the one that gets between Lagalante right now and climbing up the field.
Again, it comes down to, you know, these drivers just don't want to get caught up in anything, and, you know, we've already seen Lagalante get a little bit elbows out down towards the cascade, so, you know, they've kind of set the tone quite quite clearly. You know, they've made their mentality known, and, you know, that presence is going to be felt towards the back end of the field. You know, the drivers, you know, as much as, you know, focus on the road ahead, you do have a little delta, and you look at that, it tells you the drivers around, and, you know, you have the little, you know, the little kind of negative or the little plus time, and that, you know, you see that kind of crawling towards you before you know, like Atlanta is in the rear view, and that is going to be terrifying. So, yeah, I mean, it was sort of the safest bet is just to dive out the way, accept the inevitable. They're going to get round eventually, and there's no point in fighting something that you're going to lose out time to. As penalties start to kind of crawl in as well. We'll give you guys a report on that in just a moment. Let the stewards kind of do their thing and get through a few more before we start reading them out. As we'll have, I have a feel we'll have a bit more to do besides that anyway.
Absolutely. Well, it's worth mentioning that, of course, this race is an hour long. There is a mandatory pit stop as well in the middle that all of these drivers will have to take during that pit stop. They will have to refuel their car as well. However, they do not have to take a fresh set of tyres, playing a huge part in last week's race. Many drivers went for different strategies across the field. Some opting to taking that fresh set of tyres, spending an extra 5 seconds longer than they need to in the pits. Some, of course, not spending that extra time, just going out on the same set of tyres, but by the end of the race, we're just skidding around like there was no tomorrow. But we've mentioned already, Austin mentioned that the model for tyres has already been patched a little bit. They no longer grain as much as they did before. However, they do still degrade quite fast across the race too. So again, Austin, we're just going to have to wait and see what the tactic is here as well. We know that, not yesterday, last week, it's sort of split half and half across the field. We know that the silver split leader went for that fresh set of tyres. That really helped them late on in the race. They were climbing through the pro field as well, able to get themselves right high up in the top 10. I think finishing P6 overall was Joshua Elation last round. So who knows what the best call is here. I want to know what your thoughts are. If it was me in that situation, I think I'd probably take the fresh set of tyres to be safe. That being said, I'd probably be doing loads of practice beforehand, just doing hour-long stints on this track to find out what works best for me. But I think if it was me in this situation, I'd probably take a fresh set of tyres to be safe. What about you? If this was you in the car right now, taking a fresh set of tyres, or just going to try and stick it out on the same run for the full hour?
I mean, I haven't driven the new update yet personally, Tim, so I mean, I'm going into this with making a completely uninformed decision. I mean, honestly, I think I'd try and just look the tyres out. I mean, Oh, that's a big hit. That's Ryan Daniels getting involved down there towards Deers Loop. And I'm not sure what car that was. Was that one of the tyre racing Ferraris? It's in car number 69, I'm being told. That is Dos Ramos. So yeah, I believe Dos Ramos, Rolano and Santo, I believe all make up the tyre racing team. Traditionally, they've always kind of ran together. So yeah, no, it looks like one of the tyre racing cars just got taken out there by the Lamborghini that we saw towards the end there, and that's Ryan Daniels in the 66 with a drive-through penalty. So we'll read through those in just a moment. But yeah, no, going back to your point, Tim. Do you know, I think I might just try and look it out on the same set of tyres. I think they're just trying to lose as little time as possible and try to avoid anyone trying to use him over an undercut. Might be the way forward. I mean, I've done races around here in Oulton in changeable conditions where I've gone out on wets and I've gone out on wet tyres and it's dried up quite horribly, and the tyres have been ballooned by the end of it, but at the end of the day, just trying to keep the pace as consistent as possible and take that gamble and just try and hold on to the end.
It's an interesting thing you mentioned there, something we haven't mentioned yet so far in this race, of course, because it's not going to be playing too much of a factor at all, but there is variable weather conditions in this series. There's always the possibility of rain during the race as well. However, we're 20 minutes into this race right now. We only have 42 minutes left, and we can see on our weather forecast 30 minutes into the future. Look towards the top right hand side of your screen. You can see it is sun behind some clouds for the 30 minutes to come now. So rain probably not likely. A wind speed of 0 as well means that we're not going to have too much variable weather blowing in either. That means that cars today don't have to worry about maybe having to pit late on for a set of wet tyres either. But right now we're riding aboard Grant Willebot. Has had a lot of speed around the track today, looked very pacey during the qualifying session. Now finding himself behind Verstappen looking for a way through. They have the fastest lap of the race as well, so they've definitely got it in them right now, driving the new Lamborghini as well against the Bentley, which isn't new but has been performing fairly well, I'd say, after the update. It was a little bit disappointing last week, but Christopher Shepard definitely looks a lot more comfortable this week round. It's worth mentioning they're currently driving the RCI esports car. They're not having any added benefits from us, I can confirm. They chose to drive that car. We believe here what their aim was is to gain intelligence for the esports series, which will be running this Sunday. They're just trying to gain some knowledge of how the Bentley's performing across the other cars right now, and that's why they've opted to drive the Bentley in this championship. And oh no, what's happened here? We've got a race replay of the silver split leader making contact with someone else spinning on track right now as well, and that means that Joshua Nation there we can find themselves over the field. Actually, hang on a second, they're down in 15th, so they've got Oh, was it them colliding with each other?
I believe it was. It looked like it was the Ferrari and the Mercedes was actually of Texeira. So it looked like the camera, obviously they said Texeira at the bottom of the screen, but it looked like the camera was actually locked onto Lation, because Texeira that was in the Mercedes, that looked like they lost the rear end on the...
Yeah, you say Texeira still up in P11, only losing a couple of positions, whereas Joshua Lation now falling down to P15, definitely taking the worst end of the stick there. Also, the stewards have to say that as well. Of course, this event is live stewarded. They'll be paying attention to any incidents unfolding throughout the race too. Going back towards the top of the field, Danny Santo running in P8 still has not found a way through Billy Octane. A small train forming behind the Porsche driver. Santo on the screen right now, and that is John Aracer just behind them in the red and yellow Ferrari. Just lurking at the back of this small pack here. So Billy Octane so far said 20 minutes of solid defending. This is what I mean. There's not a lot of overtaking opportunities at Oulton Park, and that's what you were talking about earlier. You have to create these overtaking scenarios yourself. Either Aracer here or Santo needs to start putting a lot of pressure on Octane ahead, and they've just got to be as daring as possible with it. Yes, it's quite risky. You always have that risk of an instant forming, but it's the only way you're going to force a mistake out of Octane right now, is if you just keep looking towards the inside, looking towards the outside, make it look like you're going to go for a move, even if you're not planning on it at that exact moment in time.
I mean, but at the same time, though, Billy Octane does have a lot of experience here. I mean, I think Billy Octane's been a name I've seen in RCI since I joined, actually. So, you know, a lot of experience behind them, as well as having what I believe might just be the best name in sim racing. I know that makes a very good point at the moment, as per the topic of conversation. I mean, what does, as I say, that experience will come in very helpful for them in terms of holding people back. I mean, they're a fairly quick driver in their own right. We saw last week, usually it's a driver you see a bit higher up in the field. Also, they might be struggling with the Porsche a little bit, but I think that could be said for a lot of the other drivers as well. And that's like Galante pushing Ted Edwards off so slightly there into the gravel. No, it hasn't ended anyone's race, but at the same time, that was maybe, we've seen these aggressive moves from Galante so far. Maybe the stewards might have something to say about that.
Yeah, Galante not making friends out on the track today, has been very aggressive, driving their way back up through the field. We saw there them pushing Ted Edwards to the outside. Little race replay there shows the two cars making contact with the multiplier, of course, picking up dirt and going off track. But like you said, there's no real accidents coming from that, so might just slip under the steward's eyesight for now. But Galante, with that 15-second penalty, does have a lot of time that they need to make up on track. You've currently got the screen to Scherer, looking for a way through. Rolano looks towards the inside now, doesn't quite have enough momentum though to pull alongside. Tucked back behind Rolano. They now have Galante behind them, who will be looking to fight through the silver split driver as quickly as he can. You can see already the Porsche just swinging towards the inside and then back to the outside there, desperate to find a way through. Well, a big warm welcome to you all for joining us in the chat. We have Philippe Brecher from the last Friday Championship. They said this is where the last Friday Championship ended, and now continues with Lawrence Still versus Verstappen at the front of the field. Of course, Lawrence this time having a major advantage, 7 seconds ahead of Verstappen today. Of course, this is exactly... Hang on a second, who is that going for a ride off into the British countryside along the right-hand side of the screen there? Quite casually, you can see again the blue car just sitting towards the front.
Racing?
I think that's Rolano.
It is. It's one of the tyre racing cars. It just looks like they got a little bit of a bonk there with Texera through the chicane. And I saw them on the other side of the barrier there, Tim. What happened?
I don't know what happened. Of course, Rolano is still out on track, so actually I don't think it was them that was off the field. That was just a monetary glitch that we saw on our screen. But
I'm not seeing Santo in the top 10. They were running like P7, P8 kind of around there.
They've retired. Santo has retired the car, so it was them there that you saw going off the right hand of the track, ended up facing the wrong way just near the barrier, which we saw. But yeah, Danny Santo now retired out of this race, couldn't find a way through the Octane, and now out of this race. They have rejoined, but are of course back in the pits. Maybe some hardware issues for them there, but as we mentioned, Martin Lawrence 7 seconds on Christoph Verstappen right now. They're loving race at the front. But of course, it's how last championship started. Martin Lawrence got off to a great start, a couple of race wins under their belts. Harry Conway, they're getting very close to the rear of Grant Willimore. But Verstappen struck back in the later stages, which will be what Lawrence will be looking out for this time around. Becky says hello there in the chat. That means I've got to answer in the only way I know how to, General Kenobi. And we've also got Javier saying that was a huge crash. She's of course referring to the crash earlier between the two silver split leaders, Teixeira and Joshua Lation. And then we've got Rebecca also making a couple of other comments on nice new cars. And then you've got Jesus behind the Aston and Chris in a boat, of course referring to Jesus being Martin Lawrence behind the wheel of the Aston at the front in the 171, and Chris referring to Christoph Verstappen in the 747 Bentley, also known as the Boatley in the sim racing community. Well, on your screens now you've got Galante found himself up into P9 on the upward charge in this race. Does have a 15-second penalty you're going to have to watch out for later, but for now they're up into the top 10. 34 minutes left, Austin. You can definitely negate some of that damage from the 15 seconds. They probably pull a big enough gap here, especially at the pace they're flying across the track at right now.
They're on a mission at the moment, and yeah, they've been a little bit elbowy at times, so they've really made a presence known, but no, I think you're right there, Tim. I think they will at least make up enough to secure a top 10, which you're considering, making a mistake. I mean, looking at the stewarding report, it has been mentioned about them being in the wall at Cascades. It was a no fault allocated. It was number 7 understeered with made contact with 197 and takes themselves out. So 197 would have been, I believe it was Daly looking at 197's Daly on the top left running in 5th place. So that'll be the replay that we saw Galante in the wall. it looks like they just got a little bit of understeer, maybe hit the bump at Cascades, and that would have been about that. So, yeah, no, it looks like they do have the pace to make up for a decent position, all things considered. I mean, they went right to the back of the field, Tim. Like, that's a hard thing to recover from, especially around Oulton Park, and in about half an hour they've managed to do it. Harry Conway chasing down Willamot in the 317 and the 316 Lamborghini, and again, Willamot having fastest lap of the race so far. Which kind of explains the gap, I believe, between Verstappen and Lawrence. That's really opened up. They were right up to each other at one point in time. Conway looking for a way around it. Diaz lead won't find a way through.
Willamore has had a lot of pace so far, and Harry Conway already pulling into the pits. The pit window only just opened at the 35 minutes left mark. Will close when there is only 25 minutes left in the race. It's a 10-minute pit window, and in that time every driver will have to pit for a mandatory pit stop. They only have to refuel the car. They do not have to add an additional set of tyres. Harry Conway, one of the first drivers into the pits. You can see further down the screen Deere and Wilkinson also pitted, as well as Durette has also served their pit stop as well. You can see the little green line next to their driver number shows that they have fulfilled the pit stop requirements, done their mandatory pit stop. And last week we saw a lot of drivers pitting at the last possible minute. This week it seems a couple of them options doing early, and again we don't know what the exact strategy is going to be here. To share it on the screen, making contact with someone goes towards the inside. You can now see that they'll fall a couple of positions. Where have they come out? Well, it's hard to tell because of course there's been some drivers pitting, but it's like around P13 Teixeira has ended up in the Mercedes for now a couple of drivers leaving the pits too. Danny Santo joins us in the chat. We saw them go off the right hand side of the track after the left hander. We were wondering if it was a hardware issue. Well, they have confirmed that their force feedback died, which is why their car went for a nice drive off into the British countryside on the right hand side of the track there. It's a shame for you, Danny. You are having an amazing race so far, of course, looking for a way through Billy Octane as well. But awesome pit stop time. This is where things start to get shaken up a little bit. And of course, with a mixture of strategies, a mixture of in-laps and out-laps being fast and or slow if they're held up by traffic, this is genuinely where we see a bit of a shake-up in the order, especially on the track where it's quite hard to overtake.
Well, the big shake-up I've just seen is Teixeira dropping down into P15. I did see them enter the pits, but hasn't fulfilled the mandatory stop. And looking at the stewarding reports, it does say, and I'm finding it in the list now because this is one definitely to note. Incident on lap 12, turn 4, involving car number 31 and 97. Drive through for car number 31. Number 31 takes out 97, position not returned. We did see that on the replay earlier. That's 31 of Teixeira and 97 of Lation. So that in turn 4 would be Island Bend. So that was the incident where the Mercedes lost the rear end of the car, kind of rolled backwards into Lation. Lation goes sideways, hits that tyre wall you just saw for a brief moment on your screen there. So, yeah, no, it appears that the stewards have ruled in Lation's favour there. So Teixeira hasn't fulfilled that mandatory stop. They are back in the pits now to fill that, looking at P15 on the side of the screen. But they were leading Silver Class in this race overall. So that lead has now been inherited by none other than Joshua Lation.
Joshua Lation, of course, winning the race last week for the Silver Split. Managed to put a good couple of pro drivers between them and their nearest competitor as well. Just had an overall great race from the number 97 driver. They now find themselves back at the front. As you just said, Austin, a great place for them to be in. Yet again, of course, one to look out for is Deere, currently in P3 in class. They have been the only car. Oh no, there's a couple of them actually. Scratch everything I just said. It's about 5 of the Silver Split cars have pitted now, but Deere has come out of the pits, so they are racing in that position. The Honda nonetheless too, so we'll see exactly where Ramos and Lation come out in relation to Marvin Steer, currently running P14 overall. Ted Edwards behind them, looking for a way through quickly. They're driving for the Race Ventura team right now in the Porsche, and maybe won't be flying through the field as quickly as Legalante, who seems to pick himself up a drive-through penalty as well. I'm not sure whether that is because of track limits. I'm going to have a little look towards the stewards' reports in a little second here, Austin. But for now, Christoph Scheppen towards the front of the field, P2. Grant Willamot behind in P3 has dropped off the back of the Scheppen after putting pressure on them earlier on. Martin Lawrence leading this race with a whopping gap of 7.6 seconds to Christopher Shepard. I mean, yet again, it just said Martin Lawrence having a dream start to the season.
Yeah, I mean, I'd also be at the point of like Galante. I think, as you mentioned that, I'm not seeing them in the 20 cars that are on the side of the side of the thing, side of the screen. So I think they have. I mean, Kevin Moss has just come in my ear and told me that they have in fact parked it. So after picking up that drive-through, I'm not seeing any. I mean, Tim, you might be able to see something I'm missing. I'm glancing at it now. I'm not seeing anything in the stewards report. But yeah, no, it looks like that might have been a bridge too far for them, and they have retired the car. So we've lost, I believe, about 5 cars over the course of this race. They believe we started with 25, and now we're down. I mean, 20 is still a large number for around here. Denis Santo obviously has parked it as well, so we're down to 19 cars. Obviously, Santo's still in the pits, but has parked the car with the force feedback issue. So 19 cars around Oulton Park, lost 6 already. It's not what you want to see, but at the same time, that's sim racing. You know, it's a very, again, we can call it pixels all day long. You know, real life sort of factors do come into it. Attitudes and moods and emotions come into it. You know, frustrations definitely do as well. So, you know, the cars aren't real, but the racing sure as hell is.
I have just been handed a little slip of paper that said the drive-through for the number 7 car, which just saw retire, was for track limits. It wasn't actually a penalty that was given to them, so of course that means that they cut the track 3 times, receiving themselves a 93 warnings, and then they did it again for a 4th time, picking them up a drive-through penalty. And like you said, that was just last straw of the race for them, with the 15-second penalty on top of that decided, even with the comeback drive they were on, wasn't worth continuing. Marvin Steer on your screen right now, running a nice P2 in class, just behind Joshua Lation, who has only just come out 9/10 ahead of them. That is huge for the number 91 driver here. You can see now on the screen Joshua Lation for Sonala Motorsport in the number 97. They will be continuing on track, but they got handed this lead after making contact with Teixeira in the number 31. Of course, they were running P2, and the contact just promoted them up into P1 after Teixeira picked up a drive-through penalty. Now Joshua Lation running P1 under direct aggression from Steer from behind. 2 drivers that, again, in last season, Austin, Steer was leading the championship until the second to last race, but Joshua Lation finally took over from Steer there. So both of these drivers, it could go either way in this battle right now. Whilst we've got a bit of a downtime on the screen, I'm going to cover the penalties from the first half of this race so far. Austin, do interrupt me if a big fight occurs on the screen. We have an incident on lap 1, turn 3. This is involving car number 7 and the 197. No further action as the number 7 understeers, causing contact with the 197 and took themselves out. That is the instant where we saw number 7 go into the wall at the beginning of the race, find himself at the back of the field. Then have an incident later on lap 1, turn 8. This is involving cars 808 and the 61. It was a 15-second penalty to the car 808 for taking out the number 61. However, the position was returned. It's lap 2, turn 10, involving cars number 7 and the 66. 15-second penalty for car number 7 for taking out the 66. Position was returned, and that's why we saw car number 7 pick up a whopping 15-second penalty. There was then a further incident between the 2 cars on lap 3, turns 9 and 10. It's involving again the number 66 and 7. Just due to racing incident note for minor contact. Again on lap 3, turn 10, involving the 137 and the 91 cars. It's a 5 seconds for car 91. Overtaken, but had contact on the 137 on the way through. Lap 3, turn 10, this is the number 7 and 66, yet again deemed racing incident, again between these same 2 drivers. On lap 4, turn 15, racing incident as well. Incident lap 6, turn 15, again involving number 7, this time with the number 69 car, deemed a racing incident for minor contact between the 2. It's lap 8, turn 16. This is involving the number 66 and the 69. It's a drive-through for car 66 for taking out the 69. Position was not returned. It's lap 12, turn 4. It's involving the 31 and the 97. It's a drive-through for car number 31 for taking out the number 97, and the position was not returned. It's lap 14, turn 5, involving the cars number 7 and 95. warning for car number 7, causing avoidable contact. Instant lap 14, turn 10, involving the number 89, the 31, deemed a racing incident for minor contact. And then finally we have an incident lap 16, turn 5, involving the 31 and the 89 again. Racing incident, both drivers were at fault, so no penalty given between the two there. Quite a lot of repeat offenders through the field in this race so far. I've seen a couple of cars getting caught up in a fair share of instances up and down the field, but now going back to the race, Joshua Lation still ahead of Marvin Steer, managed to pull that gap to just over a second right now, but the problem is they've got nowhere to go because Rolano ahead of them sort of blocking the road right now, which means Lation, who wants to be trying to pull an even bigger gap to Steer, is going to have to clear approach to the driver first.
Yeah, I mean, so that's obviously not the easiest of tasks to do, but for Lation, that's going to be fairly huge. You know, it's going to be so it's going to just kind of, as you mentioned it before, just kind of increase that kind of buffer and increase that you know, the decrease the momentum of the car behind to make it harder to actually catch up. Dos Ramos coming up to the back of Ted Edwards, trying to make a little bit of a look through Diaz lead there. Not the easiest of corner. It goes slightly off camber at the top there. It's quite a difficult corner to actually get the power down because the back end of the car just wants to come round. So yeah, very challenging track, Oulton Park. It has to be said. I think I said at the start of the stream, it's a very driver-orientated track. It's great for qualifying. It's great for time trials. And as tight as it is, it's really fun for racing too, because you've said in the past, Tim, there are places to get by, and speaking of getting by, Lation's taking a look onto Rolano, not quite able to carry the momentum through the corner. It's very easy to understeer into those tire barriers, and for using the camber of the road to kind of pull through for the hairpin, and Lation falling back to the 89 of Rolano.
Interview with Lation last week, Joshua Lation mentioned that their goal is to win this championship. They want to be at the top, taking home as many race wins as possible and then winning the championship overall as well. That is their goal, and so far they've won the first race of the season. It's looking like it could be a second win on the cards right now. Of course, 20 minutes left, anything can happen that time. Lation continues to power forward and yet again taking the fight to the pro split to increase their chances of winning, as well as Spinala Motorsport car going in the right direction. Marvin Steer having a much better race this time around. Round 2 is up in P2 overall in classes. Lation yet again looks for a move down the inside of Rolano, backs out just before the corner starts, not wanting to go too wide there through the final corner. And now you can see trying to get a run yet again on Rolano, watching from the rear wing of the number 89. Lation a bit too far back to do anything for now. They want to close that gap by the end of the straight here, and it looks like they're going to. Rolano going a little bit wide there, might have picked up a little bit dirt. Opens the door for Joshua Lation to maybe get a bit of a slipstream and look for a way through. Can't quite get neck and neck though by the time the corner comes into play. Now it's the run down towards the hairpin. Can the Lation get a move done here? Looks towards the outside here and is starting to come alongside the Ferrari, but again just not quite able to get anywhere. That left-hander is only slight, but it does make it very difficult to get alongside the car next to him going for the hairpin. Now Lation yet again having to tuck behind, but 97, they are all over the rear of Rolano right now.
Yeah, that's a lot of pressure onto Rolano as well. It's increases the chance of Rolano making a mistake, but from what I'm seeing, Lation's getting the better exits for absolute certain. Rolano gets a really good turn in, but Lation just makes it up on the corner exit and the run down to the next corner. You can sort of see it really punishes Lation in this final sector here, where the corners are quite tight, quite close together. It doesn't really give them the opportunity to actually run up. But look at the hill, look at this exit on the second chicane, and look at the run towards Druids. Lation just has the pace of a straight line and isn't able to really make the most of it. Coming into Druids, again, you've got the dirty air to deal with. These cars are very aero dependent. They don't really like following too close. Not near as bad as Formula 1 cars, but still a noticeable amount. And Lation, yes, could be. That's Rolano getting a little bit of oversteer over the crest there. And Lation putting up alongside towards turn 1, looking out for the braking spot. It's going to be a case of who can brake later. Looks like Lation will be going for the sort of like movie around the inside, and not quite able to make it stick.
What a defense from Rolano there. I for sure thought that Lation was going to be able to get through there. They had a much better exit out the final corner. Of course, Rolano, you mentioned, got messed up towards the outside, but just able to hold it around the outside of the first corner there. Means Lation still can't find a way through. Of course, in all of this, let's get an opportunity for Steer to close the gap to Lation ahead. They're back within a second of the number 97 ahead of them. Of course, not going to be able to do too much right now as Lation still battling out with Rilano ahead, but they'll be lurking in the shadows, just waiting for a mistake from Lation. If Lation goes for a move here or it doesn't pay off, they have to be really careful about how vulnerable they leave themselves from behind, because we see it quite a lot in sim racing where someone will go for a move, it doesn't quite work out, but the problem is you then killed your own momentum and the driver behind you scoops up the position that you were originally in as well. So Lation has to be careful right now. They have to juggle the overtake as well as the defense here, but yet again coming towards the final sector of the track, and it's like you said, Lation just really getting a lot out of the exit of corners here. Again, getting a much better run down towards the final turn, ducks towards the inside of Rilano, and looks like they're going to be just alongside for the final corner, getting slightly cut off though on the inside. They're with the number 89. They're going to spin out Rilano, and Joshua Lation going to lose the pace now to Steer. Slowing down a little bit, but has to pick up the pace again because they can't stop fully to let Rilano back past. Catching the end of the replay there, you saw the Joshua Lation's front left just catching the rear of Rilano's car there, and unfortunately for them, spinning out the Ferrari head. Joshua Lation not going to be happy with how that has unfolded. That has ruined their chances of a race win. For now, to see Darius crawling slowly along the straight as they're trying to let Rilano catch up. They want to return that position, but you can see already Rilano so far down the field. I think Lation's just going to have to let that one go and set, but not going to be able to return that position, Austin.
Yeah, I mean, at least it was a good attempt there, I will say that much, but yeah, that'd be down to the stage. Obviously, we do have rules written in black and white about that, and yeah, that was just unfortunate. That's just the curse of Oulton Park. We've been saying just how narrow this track is and how difficult it is to actually get by, and well, there we go. There it is, invisible action, and it's just unfortunate. That was such a good battle, and I was actually about to say as well, if it looks like at home, you know, kind of like, if it looks like Lation was backing out of moves that looked like they were on, it's Wilkinson in a race replay, going down towards the second chicane and making a move onto, I'm not sure what number Ferrari that is, but looks like they just sort of overshot themselves just slightly, but found their way through anyway. But no, a lot of those moves might have looked like they were on, but is that Lation still? That was Lation. Almost going a whole lap to let Rilano back through. That's quite sporting actually. They probably lost more time backing off than they would have lost with any potential penalties from that. But yeah, no, a lot of the time, as I was saying, so they felt like they were backing off because it wasn't just one of those moments where if a move, you know, might have looked on, you don't want to take any chances on the fear of letting Steer through, but obviously that incident happened anyway, so it's not the best.
Yeah, it's an unfortunate situation for Lation there. Like you said, whatever penalty they got probably would have been a lot less than the time they've lost now, letting Rilano back past, but it just shows good sportsmanship. At the end of the day, Lation wanted to make up for the accident they've caused, and like you said, it was a great move set up. It's the right thing to do, look towards the inside, and hang on a second, someone's off the side of the track there, and it looks like they've just returned to the pits. That was Rilano as well. That's going to be painful for Joshua Lation, who's only just let them back through. Rilano looks like they're retiring from this race. They have retired, pulling to the side and going back to the pit lane. That is so unfortunate for Lation there, who only just returned to the position as well, but again, it shows good sportsmanship. They gave that position back, no matter how much it slowed them down, and of course that's not going to be great for them in the long run. They want to be winning this championship, but hey, this could be their drop round, Austin. At the end of the day, it's not a race win, and if they go on to win the rest of the races here, they won't have to worry too much about the result from today either. And there you go, you can see a 15-second penalty given to them for spinning out Rilano despite giving that position back as well. Very unfortunate for Lation. So probably lost about 15 seconds there slowing down. Now an extra 15 seconds on top. That is 30 seconds they've just lost there for an accident that I'd say it was definitely their fault. There's no doubt about that. But they didn't mean to cause that. You know, it wasn't a dangerous move or anything. They just happened to go for the inside and the gap wasn't quite there.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm allowed to voice an opinion, I'd say it's a touch harsh. I mean, they did back off over the course of an entire lap, but I think the ruling does state that it has to, that the position has to kind of be given back there and then within like reasonable time. So, I mean, we've seen the situation before. You know, it's one of those ones that I think it's kind of at steward's discretion. I mean, any decision really is kind of made at the steward's discretion. Obviously, we don't have any influence over that. But, you know, I mean, in hindsight, it's pain. It's a lot of pain. Elisha was having a great race, and, you know, you can't take that kind of sportsmanship away from somebody. You know, they obviously did the right, you know, did what they believed was the right thing and what was the right thing, and backing off and losing the time over the course of the whole lap. But yeah, you were totally right in terms of drop rounds though, Tim. This doesn't mean that, you know, it's a dent to the championship necessarily. It just means that, you know, you have to make up those, you know, the rest of the results over the course of the season, and there's still plenty of races left. So as much as you're having a bad race, it's another couple of weeks for everybody else to have a bad race around you.
Absolutely, I can look at that better myself. Josh Relation here, they've just got to look ahead now, really. They can't dwell on what's happened in this race. What's happened has happened now, and nothing's going to change the outcome of this race. They've just got to look ahead to the next race, and you know, you can't take this race away from them either. I mean, they had a lot of pace here today at Oulton Park. They were running in second for a good amount of time, just behind Teixeira, who then of course finds himself at the back of the field right now after receiving a penalty and an elongated pit stop due to spinning out Relation earlier on in the race. But you've also, after that, Josh Relation on their own in that first place mark. Even with the damage on their car, there was still out at the front of the field for a long period of time, able to hold off steer from behind too. It's just, unfortunately for them, came up to the rear of Rolano, was getting held up a bit and needed to find a way through as quickly as possible. And it just, the stars weren't aligned for them quite in that race today. But I think they've got to look at the positives right now and just say, look, we had that race pace today, we were doing a great job. It's definitely there for the rest of the season. The championship win still very much on the table right now. With George Kwiatkowski on our screens, number 212, running in that P11, almost finds himself up in the top 10, as we got up in a couple of incidents, I believe, Austin. That is the maroonish coloured car that you keep seeing in the back of most of the replays. Not necessarily caught up in the incidents that were being shown, but always just lurking in the back of each of the replays here. So Kwiatkowski just fighting their way through the field, finds himself right in the middle of it at the moment, and probably wanting to just to sneak back up into that top 10, a driver that we're used to seeing maybe around the P8, P7 mark rather than just outside in the P11.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those, again, this is one of those one-off races as well, you know, like one-off the kind of like performances outside of the window of what you'd kind of expect do happen, and this is kind of one, ultimately, it's been a little bit crazy as well, maybe not as hectic as last week, but it's definitely been crazy. I mean, we started with 25 cars, and 6 of them are no longer on the server, and 2 of them are parked in pits, so we've lost 8 cars out of 25 for this race so far. So yeah, it might not be hectic, but it's certainly been crazy. So drivers have been caught up in things. It's not been as many penalties handed out, but you know, there were a lot of cars that are maybe a little bit out of position. You saw Zelenskis' pace last week. They're running down in P7. So, you know, Martin Stier running in P8, and I was actually going to praise Stier and say that maybe they don't have overall pace on their side, but for the last 2 seasons now, for the last 2 Friday championships, they've been so consistent. I mean, last season they were running, quite at the top. So,
sorry, I just noticed as you mentioned Stier there, falling down 4 positions, I believe, now just in the top 11. I'm not sure entirely what happened to that number 91, but literally, as you mentioned their name, Austin, fell from P8 all the way down to P11 there, so maybe they went off track there and just regained control after a little bit. But yeah, like you said, yeah, they've been such a consistent driver. They've definitely not been the best on pace by any means. However, like they've just been all round putting out those good consistent laps, lap after lap, and that's what you've got to do if you want really good results. It's what Martin Lawrence did last week. They were definitely not the fastest across the entirety of the race. In fact, I believe their fastest lap was maybe like the top 6 out of all the drivers. There were 5 other people who had a faster lap than Martin Lawrence, despite them winning the race. However, they were just so consistent, whereas the rest of the race was absolute chaos. But they managed to find that victory, and I think that's what Steer really has going for them right now, is that they've just got that consistency, and they're very good behind the wheel of the car and putting out lap after lap at the same pace. It's why they find themselves fighting for the win quite often, despite the fact that they don't have quite so much pace as some of their other close competitors around them. That being said though, the pace they're doing today, you definitely would not turn your nose up at it. They've still got a really good lap time. Their best lap time is a 1:34.2. That's on par with some of the guys up in the pros bit right now. If you just took the best lap times and used it as a qualifying session, Austin, they'd be top 10.
Yeah, I mean, that's certainly something goes in your favour, especially on a track like this with 8 minutes remaining though. 3.2 seconds behind Kwiatkowski. That won't be enough to make up a position obviously in class or gaining the extra points. But yeah, no, again, it's very admirable. I mean, Wilkinson, I think Wilkinson was one of the, if I remember correctly, cast your minds back to the start of this race, Wilkinson had a bit of a rough beginning themselves. I think they actually were involved in one or two little incidents. So, and that's to put it politely. I think at one point either something got a penalty or get taken out. I can't remember which, but and you know, we need to go back and take a look. But I know they had a rough start, so for them to now be leading Silver Class, despite everything that's happened, you know, the incident between Lation and Texera, all of that bedlam that was going on. Yeah, I mean, in terms of Wilkinson's performance, they've been really consistent up there, as well as that is Billy Octane fighting off the likes of Texera. Texera's got all the way down in P17, Octane up in 6th, but this will be a fight for Texera to unlock themselves.
Absolutely. You see Billy Octane on your screen right now. That P3 position. Looking further up the field, Grant Wilmot currently holds fastest lap of the race. But you'd be interested to know, Austin, it's not that much quicker than a lot of the other drivers. They're barely split up by anything at the top of the field. Christopher Scheck, well, first of all, I mentioned Grant Wilmot's lap is a 1:33.427. Remember those numbers, because Christopher Streppen has a best lap time of a 1:33.435, just 800 splitting those two up, and even closer than Martin Lawrence with a 1:33.440, just 500 off Christoph Verstappen's quickest lap time there. They've been fairly consistently in their laps across the race as well. Grant Wilmot been a bit faster over the last couple of laps, slightly closing the gap to Verstappen ahead there. However, it is about 10 seconds at the moment, so they've got a bit of a way to go forward now to close it up completely there. But again, top of the field, very, very fast. It just seems too little too late from Verstappen and Wilmot right now. But again, they've got to take the positives away from this, Austin. They've got to go into next race thinking, we definitely have this pace, we just need to have it from the beginning, and we need to be as consistent as possible. Because I think yet again, Verstappen, they started in that pole position, had a really good start on their hands, but just fell behind Martin Lawrence in that turn 1 corner. It almost took them, I'd say, a good 4 or 5 laps to probably get their footing in this race before I'd say they were up to the pace we were used to seeing Verstappen at. And I think for the rest of the season, what we're going to see is almost that curve for Verstappen, the improvement curve. Of course, we know they're a really good driver already, but just getting more comfortable with the car again. Of course, the Bentley's been changed quite a bit with the most recent update. We're going to see that improvement curve with Verstappen just getting back used to the car, where they started off the championship a little bit rusty, learning what the Bentley can still do out on track. And then as we get towards the end of the championship, I imagine they'll be back up to full speed again, fighting at the front, because now at the end of this race, they're going faster lap by lap than Lawrence is. They are closing that gap slightly, so they definitely have it in them. I just think they need to be with it a lot sooner, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it looks like it's taken a little bit of time for them to warm up, as you were saying, and I almost said that at the start of the race, you know, the Bentley just taking a little bit of time to get some pacing, because Verstappen's qualifying was actually really quite strong in comparison. I mean, especially for what we saw last week and how far down the Bentley was in the order. So, yeah, but there is some amount of confidence to take from this. I mean, Verstappen has the drop around, you know, I would imagine they want to put towards last week, because they did not finish in the points last week, from what I remember correctly. I don't even remember.
They retired the race.
They didn't finish the race at all, so, you know, that's obviously a race to forget. So, I mean, for Verstappen right now, the P2's the second best case scenario, and Willemot was fairly consistent at the top last week as well. So, I mean, all things considered, yes, Lawrence has won two races. There's still a long season to go. Lawrence will also have to take a drop round as well. So, just a case of just keeping it consistent for these guys. There's still weeks to pull back and weeks where no doubt the BOP will favour the likes of the Lamborghini and in fact the Bentley.
Absolutely, it's worth noting. I mean, we saw the standings just before the race started. Martin Lawrence, despite winning round 1, is only 2 points ahead of Dan Edvardsen, who isn't here with us today. They're using this as one of their drop round races. But hey, if they come back for the rest of the season and get results like they did before, Dan Edvardsen still very much in this championship, could play a huge factor later on as well. And Grant Willemot just 9 points behind Martin Lawrence as well. Like you said, we have 4 rounds after this one and a nice wide range of tracks to go to as well. Of course, we're going to Port Ricard next week. They're then going over to Zandvoort, finishing off the season over at the new track in Valencia as well. So a real chance for drivers to shake up the standings a bit. We're going to see a lot of different results throughout the season. Of course, this race alone has been completely different from race 1 in terms of results too. Like I said, absolutely anything can happen. I think that's something that a lot of the drivers today have to remember. Yes, we've had a lot of DNS. We're down 9 cars now across this race yet again. However, very early days of the season and a lot can happen between now and round 6. It's absolutely worth saying the championship. Take you back just one championship ago when we were back in season 10 for the Friday Sprint Challenge. Streppen didn't compete in the first round. Really bad result in race 2. But again, the championship managed to actually win it, overtaking Martin Lawrence in the final race and winning the championship overall. So in some ways, Oulton, you could say actually this is very similar to season 10. Martin Lawrence getting a really good start, for Streppen just struggling a little bit and falling behind as well. So a lot can change in the next 4 races, and you definitely can't discount any of these drivers because anybody has a lot of potential to come back and start winning races back to back now.
Yeah, just sit back and enjoy the fireworks is what I'd suggest to everyone at home, because this racing, this is only forming the foundation as to what's to come. This is a long way to go. Martin Lawrence comfortably out in front at the moment though. He's got a dominant drive today. They just had a really good start and just ran with it. So whether or not there's some miracle race set up on that car, or whether or not the Aston in race conditions just fits this track with this update, who knows? But you can't discount the skill of the driver as well. Lawrence, might have lost out on the championship last season, but has proven themselves time and time again here at RCI, and in fact other race series as well. Marvins, yeah, again, you can't discount their performance today either. Like, they've been so consistent. They've not been standout. There's not been any kind of hero drives or hero laps or whatever. They've just been consistently quick enough, and that's all they've needed to be. Wilkinson, I still want to go back and see how they got into that position, but I remember them having a really rough start, so to find them running in the top 10, let alone first overall, they've done such a good job of pulling that back. I mean, you could say some of the drivers have a bit of a shambolic race. There's been the odd few that have really stood out today.
Had a little look at the qualifying standings. I want to know where Wilkinson is. They qualified in P14, which is P3 in that silver split overall. So they did sort of start at the front of the field, but I believe they had a bit of an accident early on, which saw them fall down a little bit towards the back of the top 20. So they have done a little bit of a comeback drive at the beginning, but again, just one of those drivers that sort of slipped under the rug a little bit. The thing that you've got to look at here right now, Austin, is any of these drivers on your screen have potential to do amazingly. That being said, I've just realised, end of the race, Martin Lawrence, ladies and gentlemen, your race winner for round 2 here at Oulton Park. Christopher Streppen coming across the line, scoring himself a good amount of points here, finishes second in round 2 after DNF in round 1, and Grant Willemot scoring third yet again. Bring home the exact same amount of points as they did last week. They get P3 and some points for finishing with the fastest lap of the race. John Daly in P4, a racer P5, Selenskus now coming towards the line will finish P6, Ted Edwards in P7 as well. You can see them now still heading towards the end of the track. Wilkinson, meanwhile, looking to see their first race win, and they will be getting it for the silver split rate. Wilkinson in P8 overall, P1 in class, and Marvin Steer, again, another consistent race for them. We'll find them P2 in class overall as well. Daniel Durrett, P11, and third in class will round out the podium for silver. Joshua Lation down in P13, 15-second time penalty for them. Not the race that they wanted to have today, but did have a great amount of pace overall. You can now see the final standings on the left-hand side of your screen. That's how it's ended after race 2 in the championship. Oulton, a brilliant race for Martin Lawrence, overtook Verstappen in the first corner, and since has just been joyriding around the track, not having to worry about too much that's been happening around them.
Yeah, I mean, that's the power of consistency, really. We saw, you read out the fastest laps. They were a good 10th behind, and it's not about how fast you can go, it's how much quicker you can go for a more consistent period of time, and that's exactly what Lawrence has proven today.
Absolutely, it's worth noting some of the drivers that DNF'd in that race. Harry Conway, yet again, having to DNF from round 2. Unfortunate for them, as they're a driver that everyone's been looking at to perform so far in this season. Well, they're now going to go for a little look towards the audience, looking for someone in particular. Of course, those of you that joined us on Thursday Championship back in the day know exactly who we're looking for right now. There they are in the middle of your screen. There's actually his twins here as well.
He's getting out of hand, now there's two of them.
Jesse Lee, ladies and gentlemen, and their twin brother Leslie G. You can see standing just behind them as well. Nice bald hair and the sunglasses and beard make up that iconic look on Jesse Lee. There you go, Oulton.
Still mainly E's, I see.
Yeah, 50% E Jesse Lee, we call him, as his name is made up 50% of the letter E. A great fun fact for you all there, but there you go. That is round 2 of the GT Sprint Challenge here at RCI. Martin Lawrence winning back-to-back races at the start of the season. Of course, for our partners to thank for making all of this racing possible. AK Esports, a leader in esports management and competitions around the world. Find out more about their services by visiting their website, akesports.it. We also have Fanatec, who are a global leader in high-end sim racing hardware, from low-tail pedals and direct drive wheelbases. With Fanatec for the best quality in every piece of hardware they design. Make sure if you do buy from them, go over to their website and use our affiliate link. It helps us, and thank you very much for doing so. You can go setups as well, providing expertly made ACC setups for all skill levels. Look at some of the fastest professional esports drivers and sim racing engineers in the world. If you want to improve your lap times around the track, make sure that you go to Setups. There's a link in our description and browse their premium setup shop today. Definitely helping you get the most out of your car. Digital Motorsports are your top brand, and they're your one-stop shop for all sim racing equipment. They've got a really good, interesting thing going on their website over the moment. Head over there and check out their sim rig builder. You can build your own sim rig from the ground up. It's a lot of fun to do, and it might even tempt you into investing in a bigger sim rig for yourself. So definitely visit the link in our description and go and check that out as well. And finally, we have Driver 61, who helps sim racers fulfill their full potential by providing one-on-one driver coaching. This is for both novices and pros in their own right. It can help you refine your racecraft and unlock your full potential. You get 25% off driver coaching using our discount code in the description of the video below, so go and check them out as well. Oulton, I'd say again, another very chaotic race again today, and just before I go through what's yet to come in the following week and also what's yet to come in the championship, why don't you give us a bit of a rundown on your thoughts on the race today compared to round 1?
I mean, definitely cleaner, but definitely still had its moments, and I think by itself, honestly, it's not going to be the defining race of the season, but I think that it has set into motion the framework of the rest of the season. It's really starting to kind of paint a bit of a picture as to what cars and what drivers to look out for, and it's really going to be a test as to who can adapt to the update the fastest. We're still relatively fresh into the season, fresh into the update, so I mean, if anything, it's just got me hungry for more, Tim.
Yeah, I couldn't have put it better myself. I'm very excited to see how the rest of the season turns out. Of course, we'll be coming back next week with round 3 hosted over at Paul Ricard in France. A track that, yet again, very wide track, similar to round 1 at Barcelona, but does always provide us with some great racing. Join us next week if you want to catch round 3, and if you don't want to miss out on it, make sure you hit the bell icon on YouTube so you receive notifications whenever we go live. Also consider subscribing to the channel as well. That will let you know about all the other content we post on there as well. Well, if you haven't had your sim racing fix for the week, join us again tomorrow evening for the Night Owl Championship, where Stewie will be bringing you the broadcast. Jesse Leeds on the comms alongside Kevin Boss, who will be back again tomorrow as a co-commentator to Jesse Leeds for round 2 of the Night Owl. Go and check that out as well. And then if you come back on Sunday, we'll be hosting our 6-hour esports race. We're over at round 4 at the moment. We're going to Barcelona, where a series of pro teams will be going up against each other. It's been a very exciting championship so far. All your favourite RCI commentators will be there throughout the race, navigating you through the journey. Definitely don't miss out on the penultimate round of the 6-hour esports series. And then if you want to come back for us on Monday, May the 8th, we have the final round of the Maserati Cup, hosted by John Dalton and Callum Kerwin. And we've also got Stewie again behind the broadcast of that. Kevin Boss, I believe, also driving the car. Go and cheer him along as well. This weekend is all about Kevin Boss at RCI there. Of course, been broadcasting for us today. They'll be commentating for us both tomorrow and Sunday, and then racing alongside some fellow drivers over on Monday as well. So share your support for Kevin Boss there as well. And a big thank you to them for broadcasting today's race too. Anyway, thank you very much all of you for joining us in chat today. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. We hope you've enjoyed the race as well in all of its chaotic glory. And a big thank you to you, Austin, for co-commentating with me today. Hope to see you again next week, where we'll be taking on the track of Paul Ricard for round 3 of the Friday Sprint Season 11. Thank you everybody for watching, and good night.